Hi folks, Pat Healy here for the Laker News. I'm here with Sackville-Cobequid NDP candidate Paul Wozney. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Pat. Sackville is where I call home. I've raised my family here. Still have a son graduating from St. Mary's in the spring. Still have a couple of kids I'm trying to see through public school. A longtime volunteer, I've coached minor hockey and in ringette community, and consequently, I care a lot about the community that I live in. These folks that I'm asking to vote for me are my neighbors, and think they deserve better representation, and that's why I'm running.
Okay. What has the campaign been like?
So far, the energy's been really good. Nova Scotians are, by and large, not just here in Sackville, but across the province, really concerned about, the big issues. A lot of people are worried about housing. And I think there's this perhaps misperception that housing is a concern of the houseless or the homeless. But I'm meeting so many people that are worried about, I'm in a place, but am I going to be able to stay in this place? I can afford it. Is it going to be taken from me or come out from underneath me? And so there's a lot of real anxiety out there about housing. People are concerned about healthcare. Just the sheer number of people that are talking about, I don't have a family doctor, I don't have access to primary care, I got to sit in emergency for a day and a half to get the most basic kind of care. It's not getting better after 3 years. We spent a lot of money so far, and so people are looking for a government to kind of take tangible steps. Healthcare is such a big system. Trying to fix everything all at once, all in one shot, clearly is not moving the needle on what matters most to people. So really good conversations. People are definitely open, and they're thinking hard about who they want to support in this election.
Okay. What are the top 3 concerns you are hearing from residents in Sackville-Cobequid? How would you address them if elected as MLA?
Right. So the big 3 that we're hearing about, as I mentioned, housing that's affordable and sustainable for people. Lots of people in Sackville, see plenty of, this government, when they say, affordable housing, what they really mean is new housing. And the problem, and people in Sackville see all the new housing that's going up, and it's priced out of their market. The executive apartments and the condos and, the $500,000 or more expensive single family homes, people just can't afford, that price point. And they're wondering where they're going to live. I just met a family the other day. They'd been renting a house for 15 years, and they got 1 month notice that it was going to be renovated, and they had to move. Over there on very short notice. There's folks that the location's great for them. It's close to the people they need to see for medical care. And they were going to have to move farther away. It was going to be harder to get to those services. So that's front of mind. Healthcare is another big one, and I think just general affordability. People are feeling the pressure. Costs are rising: groceries, electricity, heat, you name it. But the paychecks aren't growing, at the same rate that their costs are. So those are the sort of the 3 big things that are on people's minds. In terms of, how I would address them as an MLA, when we think about housing, we recognize that we need a government that isn't going to leave it up to developers just to keep pumping out executive class apartments and condos. Yes, there's going to be a market for that, and developers will always build that kind of housing because it's profitable. But we need a government that is going to have programs that supports people to get into homes as buyers and get off of rent. We need a government that's going to provide housing options like co-ops and community land leases. There's some really exciting projects happening in that respect around Metro that we can use as an example. One in Lucasville, Upper Hammonds Plains, another one that the Halifax Metro United Way is in charge of. And then also programs to help people stay in the homes that they own. There are a lot of people that are, worried that they're going to lose their homes. The cost of upkeep and their homes being places they can stay. I think there needs to be a range of programs as opposed to just, let's just build a lot of new apartments really fast. On the healthcare front, the NDP platform is to the most tangible right-of-way step that we can take is to build community care clinics, to make sure that people have access to a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a nurse, a pharmacist. There's a team of people that you can get the right level of care from the right expert in a timely way, and those folks know your history and your name. And we know that providing that kind of care, that's really the missing link right now. That's driving the lack of that kind of access is pushing people into emergency rooms and other parts of the healthcare system that really, they're delivering a kind of care that they're not well suited. That's not their expertise. And that's putting pressure on those other parts of the system to deliver the specialized care. They can't do that because they're delivering this really basic level of care. So we believe the way to fix healthcare, the first major step is to connect people to that primary care in community. And we're committed to building those clinics around the province and staffing them so that people can get out of emergency rooms, get the care that they need, and get on with their lives. And then in terms of affordability, bringing in, looking at efficiencies in government. A lot of people talk about, man, I wasn't expecting to having to pay $320 to renew my license plates. Are there programs and fees that the government collects that are sort of periodic that we can take off the plate of Nova Scotians so that doesn't come out of their grocery budget or things like that. Looking at the way that we tax Nova Scotians, but also the way that we, can we subsidize things and make certain things more affordable for Nova Scotians. Those are all programs and ideas we're looking at to help Nova Scotians and the income that they earned go farther at the end of the month and they have more money in their pocket.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
In Sackville and areas outward, there are many commuters going to work in Halifax and taking their own vehicles because transit just isn't an option or doesn't exist. How would you, as an MLA, work with the municipal government to make transit from these areas a priority if elected?
Yeah, we know that based on the recent municipal election and the successful candidates that transit and accessibility and reliability are big deals. People are feeling the pinch. The highways, the ways that we get in and out of town are increasingly under pressure because of developments. So the government the party that forms the next government has to turn its mind to making transit accessible, reliable, and affordable. People need options to get in and out of the city to go to work. I think we've got some big questions to ask about, particularly for people that work for, the provincial government and things like that. How can we structure people's work lives so that maybe they don't need to be in a car 5 days a week, an hour in the morning and the hour in the afternoon? Can we make work a more flexible arrangement? So that's part of the solution, taking pressure off of infrastructure. I think talking to community, I think there's this idea that we just have to have, more transit everywhere, all at the same time. And I think we need to talk to communities about, when do they need access to transit? Is it in the morning and the afternoon commute? Do we need a run at another point in the day? I think running empty buses all day through communities when they're not being well used, are there target times of the day that we need to focus on? So I think the NDP really believes in being community focused, as we develop policy and build solutions, as opposed to just sort of installing changes and say, here you go, this is how it's going to work, not realizing that paying money and installing programs may not give people what they need. So, and I think transit's a really good example of that. When do we need transit to be accessible to people? How often does it need to run? And then working with providers, either Metro Transit or maybe we need to develop other providers so that people have access. Not everybody, lives in HRM and can rely on Metro Transit. So how do we help people that are living just beyond the boundaries of HRM, get connected to the transit services here? We need to start looking at those things as well.
Next question. The following question has been submitted to us by the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. Nova Scotians want to own homes, but it is getting increasingly difficult to do so. What will you do to make it easier for Nova Scotian families to buy homes in our community?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think when you look at Sackville, one of the things about its history that's really neat is that it was a big part of the development in Sackville was built on the co-op model. And I think housing co-ops are, it's not a new idea. It's one that we've seen work here in Lower Sackville and other parts of the province. So I think funding co-ops, using land to make homes accessible to people in terms of price. Co-ops are a way that people find homes that they can call their own for a long time in their lives, and they don't have to worry about being priced out of that. They're not rentals, so I think that's a big piece. I think programs that help first-time home buyers. With down payments, we know that's the major barrier. Back when the median cost of a home was around, $230,000 in Nova Scotia, saving 5% was, for a lot of young workers, was an achievable goal. Now that the median house price is getting close to double that, saving 5% of $500,000. I mean, that's a decade and a half long proposition. So helping young homeowners, first-time home buyers with that down payment piece, I think is a big part of it. And then, so I would say those are probably the two biggest focuses that I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. The need for housing is increasing, so it's important to have homes for everyone. But with the increased climate crisis and global warming, what would you, as MLA, do about the increased developments that are causing deforestation, infilling of oceans and wetlands, and overall destruction of the natural habitat happening in Nova Scotia?
Right. I mean, at the very top of the list is enacting the Coastal Protection Act. That was passed in the legislature. It had all-party support, and ultimately, the Houston government did not proclaim that legislation. So it's sitting there. It could be the law, but they haven't taken that final step. And we know that all parties in Nova Scotia recognize that it matters, as we look at, more frequent and more intense climate events, especially, with rising sea levels and tidal swells and things like that. We have to take tangible action to protect our coast. So that's, at the very top of the list, enacting the Coastal Protection Act. An app is not going to keep our coastline safe. We need legislation with teeth to make sure that, developers and others looking to sort of take advantage of and even exploit our coastal areas, have to respect boundaries that protect and safeguard our coast. I think the other thing, we've already talked about, community land leases and co-op programs. I think there are ways to develop new homes where, we can look at more dense developments. I think having a community focus when we build developments and neighborhoods is really, really important. That we don't just build a whole bunch of houses that are on roads and you have to have a car, but thinking how we're going to fold in transit, think about how we're going to build in services that people need, like primary care clinics, access to mental health and addiction services, and things like that. Those are all parts of building sustainable, cost-effective neighborhoods that take pressure off of infrastructure and make housing affordable and sustainable for Nova Scotians.
What needs do you see in the riding of Sackville-Cobequid, like infrastructure, roadways, healthcare, that you would like to work on in the riding if elected as MLA?
Yeah, this is a great question. A lot of folks in Sackville commute to work. And I, like a lot of people in and around Metro, this is more like a riding specific question. I know this isn't necessarily the same for everybody if you live in outlying areas of Nova Scotia, but for the folks that I'm meeting as I knock on doors, that commute, how long you're sitting in traffic, the wear and tear on vehicles. So how do we make that more efficient, I think is a big thing for them. Very few people I know are really worried about bridge tolls as a cost. They're more concerned that it takes them, the drive that used to take them 35 minutes now is taking them an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. It's not the tolls that's the issue, it's the time. In terms of, infrastructure, Sackville is a growing community. Making sure that the schools that are open are places that are good for students. They're in good repair. We know a lot of kids and a lot of families are concerned about, how hot schools get early in the fall and late in the school year. Classroom temperatures can rise to, well over 30 degrees. So I think we've got to look at, ventilation and, the way that buildings are fitted so that they can move air, and that even when temperatures are high, classrooms are positive, humane places for students and staff to work. And then when we look at healthcare, we're thankful that we have the Cobequid Emergency Center, but we think that there's room for that physical footprint to be offer more services. How could we potentially extend the hours where that facility provides care to people in Sackville? Can we look at the range of services that are available to people? We know people can go and get x-rays and blood work done there. Is that a spot where we can provide and expand the range of services to people and expand the hours and make greater access to that kind of care? So I think, those are some common sense ways. It's easy to say we're going to build this and we're going to build that. I think part of what we need a government to do is capitalize on existing footprints. If we have facilities, how could we get greater value out of those so that we're not, needing to raise taxes to generate more revenue, but we can get better bang for the buck that we're already spending.
How do you plan to address the barriers women face in accessing healthcare, including issues with wait times and availability of specialists in fields like gynecology?
Yeah, this is a great question. Here in Sackville, as I mentioned, the Cobequid Center, it delivers a set of very necessary services. I think when we think about what kinds of services could we add or make available at that location, that it's a hub for this riding and for the greater Sackville area. Could we staff programs and services that meet the needs that you've just talked about? And I think the other thing that the NDP historically has advocated for is increasing access to midwifery as a healthcare solution. We know that gynecologists and medical professionals in that field offer a very necessary kind of care and service. But I think, giving people access to other practitioners like midwives can be a part of that solution as well. So, and we know midwives, can go and see people in their homes and community, which can also help with access. People that might be housebound, that getting to a healthcare facility might be difficult. There's another layer to the services that we could offer there, and we think expanding midwifery could be part of that.
All right. Why are you the choice for residents of Sackville-Cobequid to vote for?
Yeah, I mentioned that I live here, but I would say, I'm having lived in Sackville, I know the long history that Sackville-Cobequid has with NDP representation. Folks in this community remember John Holm and they remember Dave Wilson as MLAs that were community oriented. That they knew that when they called the office, they were going to get a response. They were going to deal with somebody that cared about residents. Yeah, they were members of a party, but they recognized that the job of an MLA is to represent their constituents. And I have a track record of that. As president of the teachers union, I serve 10,000 members right across this province. And when people write an email or make a phone call or send a direct message on social media and they need an answer to a question or they need to be connected to supports, that's the kind of leader I was as a union leader. I was accessible, I was approachable, I was responsive to what people needed. And that's the kind of leader I'll be for the people of Sackville-Cobequid, someone that has them, in mind in every decision that gets made in the legislature. But the legislature doesn't, that's one part of the job. The other part is serving community. And that's something I'm really passionate about and something I bring a proven track record of. So I would say, Sackville is a place that has benefited For 36 years, Sackville-Cobequid was represented by really effective NDP representation, and I look forward to continuing that legacy and that heritage of really effective community-focused representation as an NDP MLA for the folks of Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy day to do this interview.
Great to talk to you, Pat. Thanks so much for the work that you do.
Thank you.
All the best.
You too.
All right.
Pat Healy for the Laker News in Lower Sackville.